someone I've been admiring actually from afar, for her passion to empower people through agility, building growth, attitude, and also for her breadth of work over the years. As Group Chief People Officer of Xcelerant Group, let's welcome Norlida Oli Azmi from Malaysia with her speech, Culture Xcelerant for Dramatic Change. Here we have.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you for coming back after the break. I did volunteer to the organizers and said, you can have my slot so that you'll have a more meaningful break, but he did not agree to me. So the president of MAP says, not quite. I wanted to do this as a silent presentation because after the previous speaker, I'm having a problem thinking whether I'm speaking breathing out or I'm speaking breathing in. Do you know, you get very conscious, right? And then what happened was, I think Fuen took us into this hypnotic state, and I'm like, wait, am I an imposter or I'm not, you know? So there's so many preceding sessions that has really given me some thought of what I'm going to share. But above all, what I wanted to say is that I'm so envious of some of my colleagues in the MAPS organization who've been able to dedicate their work to the passion of teaching, to the passion of coaching, and I'm still stuck in the corporate life, but I hope to share with you something that has really driven both from a professional and a personal angle, and it's really about culture. When I saw the topic, I was thinking, in my current professional life, which of the elements of my professional life is really the accelerant of what we're going to do after we came back from work? Being in the corporate life still, when we came back, there was a study by Gartner that said there is a huge degradation of culture. That means some people want to come back to work, some people want to work remote, and I'm sure for those of you who were approaching several of the companies will say, are they coming in or are they coming back? How can I give impactful programs in a hybrid session? And we in the organization face tremendous pressure in this. And when the board takes me to task and say, I'm known by Oli generally, only my late mother calls me Norlida when I've done something wrong, so please feel to call me Oli. It's like when they say, Oli, what can you do about this culture degradation? And I say, why are you looking at me? I am the HR director, because culture ultimately is two ways. It is driven in an organization and society like us, a bit from the top, but it is embodied by the people on the ground. So how do I balance that, you know? And I keep pushing back that the accountability of culture lies with everybody. And I just look at my CEO and says, Vivek, what you going to do with it? Are you going to invest money, or you think this is something that HR can do by and by? And that's why for me, I have picked up culture with such a passion, and I continue to pick it up as a culture. And when I saw this topic, I said, okay, if we wanted to see what is the accelerant or the catalyst for change, I think it's culture. Because in an organization, and I think in whether it's a commercial organization or outside, culture plays a part. If you read the literature, there's so many models. Like all things in life, there are models and there are frameworks. Is it important? I think it is. Because through the various models, you pick up the elements that matter. But what you need to do is to make it actionable. You really need to match to the organization and the people that are in the organization. I've worked before in multinational banks where it's like, they used to call it a bowl of piranha, because it's like, first place, second place is fine, but it's not for me. It was an organization that only played to win. So it's very different from an organization that balances well-being. I wanted to share this as for those of you who are approaching us in the organizations. These are some of the points that we see that's really important. I'm just going to pick up like 3 models when we were designing. I'm with Axiata, a telecommunication company. If your Celcom line don't work, don't tell me, because they have merged with DG, but anyways. So McKinsey had this 7S, and it's really quite cool because it allows you to see the hard skills and the soft elements. I now take as exception to this because I don't think things like culture is soft. When we come out, I'm going to share with you how culture is such a hard driver, and the KPI that sits to me is really, really burdensome. But anyway, the first one is really key, is the strategy of the organization, because it's going to shape the kind of culture you want to drive. I talked to you about the multinational bank that said it was a bowl of piranhas. But my first job, and this company I'm going to say, I was with HP, of which the most important element for us was a collegiate environment. So it was quite interesting. In moving organization, they said, how can you move from a collegiate environment where you have to know people by the name? In those times in HP, we always had to wear a badge with your name because they felt that a name will build closer connections. And we talk today about connections. If you call somebody by name, you will really understand so much more. And I think strategy is really, really important because it sets the tone. After coming back from the pandemic, we have presence in about 11 countries. And we pride in operating in frontier countries. Sri Lanka, you know what happened in Sri Lanka. It caused us to pivot. Myanmar, that's another one. So culture is really has an intersectionality also with the society that we're in, the country. And then there is an organizational culture, and then there is a subdivision. So the intersectionality really presents a complex structure. And then there is a lot of systems. We talk about, and I know after this you have a lot about AI and everything else. The disruption of the generative AI is real. My philosophy is let's embrace it, and embrace it well so that you can stay ahead of it. So the softer elements, as it was under the McKinsey, is really about the staff or their development, the skills, and shared values. I think the most critical element here for me is the strategy that will define the culture that you want to infuse and the shared values. So before we went to the sort of culture refresh for Axiata, we also talked about the iceberg model. I like this more because increasingly we exist in an ecosystem. You can't be insular, you can't always only think internally to the organization. I think the outside-in perspective is so key. And this is where you will see the same statements, and I'm sure some of you are leadership and management consultants will see the vision mission. But what is more important is really under the water. What you don't see is what shaped us operating. And I was quite interested that when I was in advocacy group, it is really the undercurrents that was defining how far can our message be, how authentic we are. And I think this is where today we are taken to a greater accountability for our own authenticity, that the iceberg underneath the water is more important than your surface. You hear authentic leadership being cited. And I think all this about attitudes and people's fundamental needs remain very, very important. I want to take you to the last one, which is a much more simplistic. One of the things that I learned is that it doesn't matter. You don't really need the most sophisticated framework or model. You need to action your culture program, therefore it needs to be simple. And you know, sometimes, I mean, I'm in the HR world. Sometimes we write policies only the legal lawyers will understand. I believe today we should write in a language that is much more understandable by everybody, because the HR document is not for the HR specialist. I know what it means, but to the employee, do you know what it means? It's written too legalistic, and I think it's too much of self-protectionism. If they fire me, I'll be a full-time consultant. But anyways, so the manifestation of this is many, many things, right? And you see that the artifacts that represent culture is very, very important. So we talk about the values, we talk about the ritual, heroes, and symbols. I just wanted to flesh these three because when we were doing what matters to Axiata, I was thinking, how do we do it? I think doing research is good. Some of it, my research is, I've learned to master ChatGPT. I was just talking to a colleague, some friends at the back there. Actually, ChatGPT, the best of your prompts is like your critical thinking. The more you ask a critical frame question, the better are the output. And it's a phenomenal thing, because then you use your value judgment so much better. So I'm like saying, okay, let's master this critical thinking into the prompts of ChatGPT. I have a colleague, Munir, in the HR world, who has written 100 prompts to elevate and raise the bar for the HR practitioners. So we hope to be better partners with the business. So anyways, so it comes back, I'm like, okay, so let's do this for Axiata when the bot says, okay, Ollie, there is a degradation in culture, what you going to do with it? I said, okay, boss, if you're with me, let's look at it. Look at the refresh. There is a triad on how you want to push culture. Firstly, the words that you saw, purpose. These days, if a company don't have a purpose, the millennials and the Zenders won't join you, because they say you're too old-fashioned. But you know, we are multi-generational in the organization, so we still put the vision mission. You know, everybody is relevant and you stay with it. So the purpose and the strategy gives you direction. Vision mission still remains. Ultimately, the why is answered by the why thing. Brand, I think, is also very important, because how do you reflect yourself outside, especially if you're a B2C, right? So there's a corporate brand, there's a product and services brand, and there's a talent brand. I gave my corporate comms such a hard time. I'm like saying, oh my God, you're such an ageist. Everybody is below 15 years old. Come on, amp it up. Or, you know, in the cultural view, we have women who dress differently. How come all are in skirts or all are in hijabs? Come on, people, get real. So I think we owe to question the collateral. I won't call out on the hotel. I get very nervous when I see plastic bottles, because every organization talks about sustainability. So why do we, you know, I'm saying to my people, if you contract a caterer, tell them, keep the plastic bottles, and I tell my facility person, fill up those IKEA bottles and give me paper cups. And I say, boss, it's not single plastic, I don't care. The visual impact is how you pass a message, because it reflects your culture value. So culture is about values and behavior. So we did this, and what is not here, okay, I'll go to this. So like I said, who cares about framework, right? They're going to say it's meant for the board, meant for the strategies, meant for the big bosses. What's really, really important is, can we really implement in the organization? So we call upon and demand upon the leaders to please role model, walk the talk, similar to the plastic bottle things. So forgive me. I think language is very important as well in role modeling. I'm going to say this just because I can today. We use the word guys very simply, right? We say, good morning, guys. And I said, aren't you saying good morning to the women too? He says, but it's normal, everybody call it good morning, guys. I said, why can't they say good morning, people, right? So I say, oh, Ollie's being pedantic. I am, but I think language is very, very important, fundamental to communication, and key to culture. So the other one is reinforcing with formal mechanisms, and when people do good in the culture, we really need to reinforce the good behavior, but we also must have the courage to call out the bad behavior. Generally in the Asian society, we're so respectful. We have a high tolerance for suboptimal performance. In a culture, in organizations such as ours, we say we want a winning culture. But do we play to win, or do we play not to lose? And I think that's the reality people need to wake up to. And then developing talent and skills, I think this is quite understanding. I want to pick up forth is fostering understanding and conviction. Because culture comes from the heart, it comes from the mind, and it is manifested to the actions that you do. So how do I bring about that people will do this across it? Culture is not a soft word. Recently I flew 24 hours to Nepal. We have a new CEO there. And he says, Ollie, I have a new strategy, I have a vision. So the transition from him to me was saying that I have these aspirations and all these things, but critical for me to deliver is the culture. Because then he put culture in the context of business. And for example, you know, you hear in organizations, everybody does this agile methodology. And then they say, oh, I've done go-to-market, GTM. I've reduced it from 100 days to 20 days. But what is the impact? So there's a lot of frameworks, there's a lot of exercise. What culture means is, do you deliver business results? The other thing in Axiata we're quite big is we want to grow, but we want to grow responsibly. So we're very strong in governance. So that's another part of culture, which is the balancing to exceptional performance. But the last part is something that has come up recently, which is the DEIB, diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging. I think there's a new one called access. For people who may have disability, do we have an inclusion to them? And if they have an inclusion, how do we make them successful in the business? So in Axiata, how we are measured for culture is not how many people are happy with my Hari Raya events. I've just posted on LinkedIn, we had the WOW event. That's important to bring the culture, the societal culture, but for an organization, it's really measured by numbers. It is measured by other factors as well, but it has to be very tangible. And I also wanted to bust this myth that your EES is culture, is a single point of emotion, satisfaction, and happiness. Culture is made up of so many more things. It's made up of having the passion to achieve the organizational goals or your society's goals, but it's also, I think earlier we heard Alex says, the obsession to deliver for the results. And I think this is where culture means so much more beyond the model. And I love this book that says, change the culture, change the game. Because that can be a catalyst. So for us in the organization, we have a huge ambition. And so my boss really gives me a headache. Every day he says, Oli, how have you implemented the program for the winning culture? Make it happen, make it happen. So, it's not about the bosses or the leaders that stomp up and say eloquent words. These days, post the pandemic, sincerity, authenticity. It is almost someone who can speak quietly, but can give clarity in a moment of disruption. And I think that makes for today's leader. So we put a little bit, a lot of it is driven in our societies by the leaders that we have, and leaders are not defined by an organizational structure, but leaders are defined by people who can influence. Those are the true leaders. Like I said, for all the things I'm saying, I'm going to be fired as a CPO because org charts don't really matter. Sometimes it's almost fear that gives you compliance. So that's culture by design. That's talking about strategic intent. That talks about leaders driving it. But ultimately, everybody has to behave. They have to believe to do it. This is the other flip side of leadership, and that's why I say culture with passion. And passion contributes more to value creation than anything else. That is a fundamental element of a culture shift. And I love this passion pyramid. And I hope it hits to obsession, but it goes to the employee needs. I think it's always important for us to look from the lens of the people that we are serving. When I was in HP, I was taught early on, the big C is the customers outside, the small c is the customer inside. So for me, always I'm serving somebody, either internally or externally. I'm looking at my time so that and then it talks about the coaching. All these things I can hear the people in the room really going for it. And I believe organizations these days really need the services of seasoned practitioners or people who bring novel ideas. I love the voice session. In Citibank before, when I was a relationship management, we were really taught how to speak. We were guided what to wear, what not to wear. Those days you can't wear dangling earring. It has to be studded if you work in an American bank. It has to be a navy blue suit. It has to be below a certain knee. So those were guidance those days, but today is jeans, khaki, polo. It's a different etiquette, right? So the ways of working have changed. So culture has changed tremendously. So to me, it's one of the most exciting facets today that will drive organizations to reach their goals. And I think this is really key, where people will encompass many, many things within their culture program, be it organizational goals that are financials, be it governance. And one of the things that was really key for us is really on the ESG. We hate to be greenwashing or whitewashing. So I think people need to understand scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, because it applies to all of us here. I don't think it's enough not to know. It's just like generative AI as well. You have to know. Because to be a functioning member of society today, where we are so integrated, those are elements that we have to do. And this is where the culture elements the artifacts, the subliminal messaging is so key. When I challenge my people, why are you doing sexist or ageist, or, we need to be very careful in our language. Not so careful that we dare not cross the street, but we have to be very understanding of the implications. Today, the landscape of the people in the society, as well as in any organizations, are the younger one. They will challenge you, they will ask you why, and what is just not enough anymore. So that's a little bit of my sharing. I tried to be quiet and upright. Cynthia's breathing, breathe out. I know I'm not always successful, okay? But age has mellowed me, so I've learned. But that training in Citibank really helped me because I was a relationship manager. And I rose to the point where I was heading the multinationals. So it was very interesting. My Italian customers love a lot of passion when they're doing banking, And so I said, okay. And my French clients would also have the same disposition. The Koreans would want different. So you pitch personalities to deliver and activate what you really want to achieve in that relationship. And I think this morning someone talked about connections. Connections is really relatability, and I believe that going forward, culture is really the great force for the impactful change. It makes a lot of our jobs and roles so much more exciting because the opportunity to participate, to make an impact, which I feel the world is at a point of inflection, and it could be very exciting. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that, Cynthia, I'll come for training much better, and I'll do more hypnosis with Phuan. Thank you very much for listening. Have a good evening, everybody.